Okay, some more linear equations, and these are going to be now the multi-step equations and applying our distributive property and simplifying, so doing all kinds of fun stuff. So first of all, we take a look at this one, and we have parentheses, so we want to remove the parentheses so we can get at these numbers because I've got some x's here and some numbers here, but they're kind of tied in to this grouping, so we have to remove that parentheses. So we have to just multiply out using the distributive property. So 2 times 3 is 6, so I've got 6x. And a positive times a negative is a negative, and 2 times 4 is 8. And that equals 3 times x is 3x, and 3 times negative 1 is negative 3. And now I have an equation like we did earlier. Variable number, variable number. I try to get all my variables on the left. I've got more positives there, so I'll subtract 3x from both sides. And that's 0. 3x minus 3x is 0. And then 6x minus 3x is just another 3x. So I got 3x minus 8. And that equals negative 3. And now I want to add 8 to both sides. I want to get rid of the 3 and the 8. 3 is joined by multiplication, the 8 subtraction. The opposite. Subtraction is the easier of the two operations, or the weaker. So I would do the opposite of subtraction. So I would add 8 to both sides. And I've got negative 8 plus 8 is 0, so I just have 3x left, so 3x on the left, and that equals on the right. And then 8 minus 3 is just 5. Or a negative 3 plus 8, the signs are different, so I take the sign of the larger, which is positive, and the difference, which is 5. And then I just divide both sides. The 3 is joined by multiplication, and the opposite of that is division, so I'll just divide both sides by 3. Oops. And 3 over 3 is 1, so that just leaves me with an x. And that equals, and 5 over 3, just leave it as 5/3. And then again, if you look at this, make sure your equal signs are lined up. And notice what I did to the left, I did to the right. What I did to the left, I did to the right. What I did to the left, I did to the right. So if you keep your equal signs lined up, you can do something like this with a pencil. Okay? Here's another one. And then I try to make up as many of these as I can that give you kind of different looks, but if you have a linear equation that you don't know how to solve, just let me know and I'll try to reply to you with a solution, or I'll try to put a solution of it on my website if it's that tricky, you know, if it doesn't look like anything I've done, but I'm going to try to do as many different possibilities as I can. So here we've got a parentheses. It's preceded by a negative sign, so sometimes this bothers people because they don't know what to do with this. Well, you can think of this as a negative 1. So if you just see a negative sign there, you can just think of that as a negative 1, and we just have to use the distributive property. Okay? So again, we have to remove the parentheses. That's our first step. So I would have 4x, a negative, and this is like a positive, so a negative times a positive. Remember, when you're multiplying, if the signs are different, it's negative. So a negative times a positive is a negative. And then 1 times 3 is just 3. And a negative times a positive is another negative. And 1 times x is x. And that equals 2x. Or sometimes you can think, if I've got a negative sign preceding a parentheses, then each term in the parentheses will change signs. Now I have to simplify on the left because I've got numbers and x's. I got 2 x terms. So I can simplify these. 4x and x, negative x, are the same. So what's 4x minus 1x? That's just 3x. So this becomes 3x minus 3 equals 2x. So always simplify. Before you do anything else, make sure you simplify your x's. Don't be moving x's around because you double your work. Always simplify. Now I've got x's on both sides. So I try to get all my x's on the same side. I've got more positive x's here, so I'll subtract 2x from both sides. And 3x minus 2x is just 1x, so I've got 1x minus 3 on the left. And 2x minus 2x is 0, so we've got 0 on the right. That's okay. 0 is a number. Oops. Sorry about that. Okay. So I subtracted 2x from both sides. I got x minus 3. 2x minus 2x is 0. And then I just have to get rid of this 3, so the opposite of subtraction is addition, so I'll just add 3 to both sides. And on the left I have x, and that equals 3. And again, keep your equal signs lined up, and you can see what I do to the left over here, I do to the right as I'm transforming my equation. Here I had to simplify everything first. Okay. And I think we could get one more in, so let's try number 16, wherever that is. Two times 1 minus 3x minus 3 times x minus 2 equals 16. So we got a lot on the left, not much on the right. So a lot of work to do on the left, and the first thing we're going to do is remove the parentheses, so we'll use the distributive property. 2 times 1 is 2. And a positive times a negative is a negative. And when you multiply these out, I always think sign, number, variable. Sign, number, although it should be numeral, and variable. Okay, so sign, numeral, variable would be more in line with what I do with sign numbers. So my sign is a positive times a negative is a negative. My number term is 2 times 3 is 6, and my variable is x. So 2 minus 6x. And the same thing over here. A negative times a positive is a negative, so there's my sign. 3 times x is 3. And a negative times a negative is a positive. So negative times a positive is a negative. A negative times a negative is a positive. And 3 times 2 is 6. And that equals 16. So I've got, oh, this is 3x, pardon me. A negative 3 times x is negative 3x. Okay? All right, and then I've got some variable terms, a negative 6x and a negative 3x, and I've got some numerical terms. So these are my like terms, so I want to combine those. A negative 6 and a negative 3 is a negative 9x. And a positive 6 and a positive 2 is a positive 8. And that equals 16. So now I've got variable number, number. And that's one of the three-step equations we saw earlier. Or two-step equations, pardon me. Okay, so I hope this is clear how we remove these parentheses and simplify. So the 8 is joined by addition, the negative 9 by multiplication. So the weaker the operations is addition, so I'll do the opposite. The opposite of addition is subtraction. And I have negative 9 on the left, negative 9x, pardon me. And that equals, and 16 minus 8 is 8. And then the negative 9 is joined by multiplication. The opposite of multiplication is division, so I'll just divide both sides by negative 9. A negative over negative is positive, 9 over 9 is 1, so I just have x on the left. And this is just going to be a positive over a negative is a negative, so I could put the negative sign in the front of the fraction. That's just going to be 8 over 9. Sorry about that. So there's your solution. Divide both sides by negative 9. And I think you'd see that I got my equal signs lined up. Combining like terms over here, so I just do 2 lines if they're this numerical, 1 line if they're x's, so I keep that on track. So combine my like terms, subtract 8 from both sides, divide both sides by -9, and there you go. So if you're nice and neat, it's very easy. It's very procedural, step by step. But you have to ask yourself those questions.